Last night, at exactly 3:47 a.m., something inside you whispered it was time to wake up, seconds before your phone rang with that call that would completely change the course of your week. You ignored the whisper, of course, as you always do, because we've been conditioned to believe these moments are coincidences, random artifacts of a hyperactive mind searching for patterns where none exist. But what if I told you that in that exact moment, in that almost imperceptible whisper you dismissed as imagination, the quantum field was literally showing you a preview of your future, a fragment of reality that hadn't yet materialized but already existed as potential waiting for your conscious observation? The truth is you weren't imagining anything, you were tuning into a frequency body captured before your rational mind could process it. And this phenomenon isn't mystical or esoteric. It's documented physics, measurable biology, neuroscience replicated in independent laboratories. Think about how many times in the past week you felt that inexplicable tightness in your chest when you were about to make an important decision. That visceral sensation that something was wrong even when all the logical data pointed to the contrary. How many times did you ignore that soft voice telling you not to trust a certain person, to choose another path, to say yes when your mind screamed no? Each of these experiences you labeled as paranoia, anxiety, or simply irrational emotion was actually your biological system operating in a temporal dimension that science is documenting with increasing precision. Your body, specifically your heart and nervous system, were literally detecting information from the future, processing quantum data that hadn't yet manifested in the physical plane. And you, trained since childhood to trust only what you can see, touch, and measure, systematically ignored these signals, creating a profound disconnection between you and the most sophisticated reality navigation mechanism that exists, your capacity for presentiment. The problem is we live in a culture that has transformed rationality into religion and logic into unquestionable dogma. From the moment we enter school, we're taught that linear, sequential, cause and effect thinking is the only valid way to understand and navigate reality. But while you were busy building spreadsheets, analyzing pros and cons, weighing evidence and demanding concrete proof before every decision, the universe was operating on a completely different frequency. A frequency where information doesn't travel from past to future in a predictable straight line, but exists simultaneously in multiple temporal dimensions, accessible to any biological system sophisticated enough to tune into that transmission. And here's the part that will expand your understanding. You don't just possess this system, you are this system. Every cell in your body is a biological antenna calibrated to receive these transmissions. But you've spent so much time trying to think your way through life that you've completely forgotten how to feel your way through it. Now, before we continue on this journey of rediscovering your innate power, I need you to do something crucial. Subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell, because what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes isn't just information. It's a consciousness technology that will fundamentally alter how you perceive and interact with reality. From this moment on, every word you absorb will begin to rewire your neural circuits, reactivating capacities that have been suppressed by decades of social conditioning. And you don't want to miss a single second of this transmission because, unlike everything you've ever heard about manifestation and the law of attraction, this is measurable science, replicable data, physics applied to the practical transformation of your daily experience. What most people don't understand, and you probably don't understand yet either, is that there's a fundamental difference between receiving a signal from the quantum field and recognizing that signal as legitimate. Your body is constantly processing information from dimensions your conscious mind doesn't even recognize exist. But because you've been programmed to validate only what comes packaged in logic and rationality, you dismiss most of these transmissions as irrelevant noise. It's like having a radio tuned to a station that broadcasts vital information every morning, but you keep the volume so low we hear static. The static is there, the transmission is happening, the information is available. But you've trained yourself to ignore everything that doesn't scream, everything that doesn't force your attention, everything that doesn't come accompanied by obvious evidence announcing its arrival. And meanwhile, while you wait for the unmistakable signal, the undeniable miracle, the impossible to ignore synchronicity, the quantum field is constantly transmitting subtle information. But you're deaf to anything that isn't a screen. The question isn't whether you have this capacity. The question is whether you're willing to recognize it and develop it consciously. There's a set of experiments that's profoundly challenging our understanding of the linear nature of time and consciousness. And when you understand their implications, you'll understand why that whisper you ignored wasn't imagination. Dean Radin, one of the most rigorous researchers at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, placed volunteers in front of a computer screen and began showing random images, some calming like landscapes and flowers, others disturbing like accidents and violence. But here's where our conventional understanding of reality begins to be questioned. Participants' bodies reacted to the disturbing images before they appeared on the screen. Not after, not during, but before. The nervous system fired, the heart accelerated, sweat glands activated, brain waves altered. All of this happening on average 3 to 5 seconds before the image was randomly selected by the computer. Think about this for a moment. Really absorb what I'm saying. The human body was consistently responding to events that hadn't yet happened, as if the future was somehow accessible to our biological system through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. But this is just the beginning. The Hartmouth Institute, led by researchers like Roland McCratty, took this investigation even deeper and discovered something fascinating that deserves our attention. They documented that the heart, yes, that organ you thought was just a biological pump, has its own complex nervous system with approximately 40,000 neurons. Basically an independent neural processing system. And this cardiac system doesn't just respond to the future before the cranial brain. It literally sends the information to the brain, instructing it about what's coming. Your heart isn't just detecting future information. It's actively processing and transmitting that information to your brain, creating a cascade of physiological preparations for events that technically haven't happened in your linear temporal frame. It's important to note that these are rigorous experiments, replicated multiple times, with appropriate statistical controls. The most intriguing part is that this phenomenon called presentiment doesn't just happen in laboratories under controlled conditions. Studies conducted in casinos showed that experienced gamblers display anticipatory physiological responses seconds before winning or losing large amounts. Their bodies apparently knowing the outcome before the cards are turned, before the dice stop rolling. Successful stock market investors show similar patterns, their nervous systems reacting to market movements that haven't yet happened. And when questioned, they invariably describe the same sensation, a visceral knowledge, a bodily certainty they can't explain logically. What these studies are suggesting, and it's important to be precise here, is that our consciousness may not be completely limited to the present as we've traditionally assumed. It may extend through time in ways we're still trying to map and understand scientifically. Now, let's pause here for a moment for a quick practice that will help you feel this directly. Place your hand on your heart right now. Breathe deeply 3 times, each breath slower than the last. On the 3rd exhale, ask your heart, what do I need to know now? Don't force an answer. Just remain silent for 5 seconds and observe any sensation, image, or subtle knowledge that arises. Hold on to that sensation. That's your presentiment system in action, simple as that. No complex rituals, no years of meditation, just you accessing a capacity that was always there. And it's this capacity that scientists like Dr. Joe Dispenza have been working extensively to document. In his workshops, he's observed people entering states where the brain and heart synchronize their electromagnetic signatures. And the documented results include significant physiological changes, people reporting profound transformations in their health and well-being. What Dispenza and other researchers are documenting is that when the brain and heart enter coherence, when their frequencies align, the human body generates a measurable electromagnetic field that's approximately 60 times stronger in electrical amplitude than the brain's field alone. And the magnetic component of that field is about 100 times stronger, detectable meters away from the body. This isn't speculation, these are measurements made with high-precision SQ-AD magnetometers. Einstein, that genius who revolutionized our understanding of physics, said something profound worth considering. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. He wasn't being poetic or metaphorical. He was pointing to something fundamental about how we process information. Intuition, presentiment, this capacity to sense the future, it's not an inferior or primitive thought process. It's a different way of processing information, one that can access data that hasn't yet manifested linearly in time. But there's something even deeper happening here, something about the true nature of your nervous system that needs to be understood. Your body isn't what you think it is. In fact, it never was. And what I'm about to reveal about the true nature of your nervous system will expand your understanding of your role in creating reality. While you were busy believing your nervous system was just a network of biological wires transmitting electrical signals from point A to point B, like an organic version of your house's electrical wiring, the documented truth is that every neuron, every synapse, every nerve fiber in your body functions as a sophisticated biological antenna. The HeartMath Institute has consistently measured that your heart's electromagnetic field extends at least 3 meters around your body. 3 meters of electromagnetic information radiating from you every second, influencing and being influenced by other fields around you, an immeasurable interaction of data exchange that happens continuously. But here's where the understanding deepens. Your nervous system isn't just passively receiving information like a radio waiting for transmissions. It's actively transmitting its own electromagnetic signature back to the environment, creating what physicists describe as a feedback loop. Every time you feel fear, every time you experience joy, every time you enter a state of certainty or doubt, your nervous system isn't just processing these emotions internally. It's transmitting these frequencies electromagnetically, influencing the field around you. It's as if you were a walking broadcast station, constantly on air, radiating the frequency of your current vibration. And the environment around you, including other people and their electromagnetic fields, is responding to that transmission in ways we're only beginning to measure and document scientifically. The fundamental problem and likely the reason attempts at change feel inconsistent is that most people live in a chronic state of nervous dysregulation. This means they aren't just feeling stressed. They are broadcasting chaos instead of coherence. When your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight mode, which happens to most people in modern society much of the time, you're essentially transmitting a frequency of survival, of scarcity, of threat. And the interesting thing that other nervous systems around you pick up that transmission. HeartMath studies show that when one person enters cardiac coherence, this can be detected in the electrocardiogram of nearby people. Literally, your internal state is influencing the internal state of others through measurable electromagnetic fields. You're not just experiencing your reality individually. You're participating in a collective electromagnetic symphony where each person is simultaneously musician and instrument. The ancient yogis intuited this thousands of years ago, though they didn't have the scientific vocabulary we have today. When they spoke about prana, about vital energy flowing through the body's energetic channels, they were describing phenomena we can now measure. What they called chakras, we can now understand as bioelectrical information processing centers, each operating at specific frequencies. Your solar plexus, with its dense network of neurons, isn't just a cluster of nerves. It's a processing center specialized in information related to personal power and identity. Your heart center, with its 40,000 neurons, isn't just pumping blood. It's processing information about connection, resonance, and as studies show, temporal information data about future events. Neuroplasticity, that property of the brain to reorganize and form new connections, isn't just about learning new skills. Every time you consciously choose to remain calm in a situation that would normally trigger your alarm system, every time you breathe deeply and shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic mode, you're literally reconfiguring your neural hardware. Dr. Dispenza has documented measurable changes in brain structure in meditators after just 4 days of consistent practice. 4 days. We're not talking about years of monastic practice. We're talking about the time of a long weekend. But instead of passively consuming entertainment, these people were actively reconfiguring their biological operating systems, transforming themselves from passive receivers into conscious frequency transmitters. The secret that's about to change how you interact with every moment of your life is this: your nervous state isn't just a consequence of your reality. There's growing evidence suggesting it may be intimately related to creating it. Think about the implications. If your electromagnetic field is constantly interacting with other fields, if your heart is detecting future information and transmitting it to the brain, if your state of coherence or chaos is literally influencing the environment around you, then every moment, every breath, every choice to remain in fear or shift to love is actively participating in the construction of collective reality. You're not just a passive observer of the universe. You're an active participant in its moment-to-moment creation. The synchronicities, you spend your whole life noticing those intriguing moments when you think of someone and they call, when the number 111 appears on the clock exactly when you were reflecting on changes, when the right book literally falls off the shelf into your hands. All of this that you interpret as messages from the universe can be understood in a deeper and more fascinating way. What's happening in these moments isn't necessarily the universe sending you messages like a cosmic postal service. What may be happening is that you're observing correlations between your internal state and external events. Carl Jung, the psychiatrist who first coined the term synchronicity, was describing something he called meaningful coincidences, events that seem connected not by linear causality, but by meaning. And modern research is exploring whether these connections might be related to electromagnetic fields and states of coherence. Think of this as a resonance phenomenon. You know, the physical principle where a vibrating tuning fork can make another tuning fork at the same frequency start vibrating too, even at a distance. Some researchers propose that something similar may be happening with synchronicities. When you're in a specific internal state, vibrating at a particular emotional frequency, you may be more prone to notice or even attract experiences that resonate with that frequency. But here's the important point: synchronicities aren't necessarily confirmations that you're on the right path. They may simply be reflections of your current internal state being mirrored in your external experience. When you repeatedly see certain numbers or patterns, this may be reflecting the dominant frequency of your electromagnetic field at that moment. That's why different people report different synchronicities. Each one is operating on their own unique frequency signature. There's something that needs to be honestly acknowledged. Unpleasant synchronicities also exist and operate by the same principle. When you're in a state of deep anxiety and suddenly everything seems to go wrong in sequence. The car won't start, you spill coffee on your shirt, miss the bus, get a ticket. This isn't the universe testing you. It's your electromagnetic field in a state of chaos influencing your perception and perhaps even your actions in subtle ways that create or attract chaotic experiences. The electromagnetic field you generate doesn't judge, doesn't have moral preferences. It simply resonates and interacts with other fields according to physical principles. Dr. Joe Dispenza has observed in his studies that people in a state of heart-brain coherence report a significant increase in positive synchronicities. But this may not be because they've become more special in the universe's eyes. What may be happening is that when your system enters coherence, when your heart and brain are transmitting organized and harmonious frequencies, instead of chaotic signals, you're more apt to perceive meaningful patterns and perhaps even influence probabilities through your coherent electromagnetic field. It's like the difference between throwing a stone into a calm lake versus turbulent waters. In the calm lake, you can clearly see the patterns of waves spreading. In turbulent waters, everything is chaos and interference. Most people live in constant internal turbulence and then wonder why their experiences seem random and disconnected. But there's something even more fascinating about synchronicities worth exploring. Quantum physics has demonstrated the phenomenon of entanglement, where particles that have interacted once remain connected, with changes in one instantly affecting the other, regardless of distance. Some researchers speculate whether something similar might occur on larger scales. Every person you meet, every place you visit, every significant experience, you may be creating connections that remain somehow active. When a synchronicity happens, when that person appears at the right moment, or that opportunity arises exactly when you need it, there may be more happening than mere chance. Though this remains in the field of scientific speculation, it's a fascinating area of investigation. The common mistake many people make is treating synchronicities as rare and special events that must be celebrated and obsessively interpreted. In reality, patterns and connections are happening constantly. Your brain, for efficiency, filters the vast majority of sensory information it receives, otherwise you'd be overwhelmed. But when you're in a state of coherence, when your nervous system is calm and your electromagnetic field is organized, you naturally perceive more of these connections. Some studies suggest that meditative practices increase the ability to perceive meaningful patterns, not necessarily because more synchronicities are happening, but because your perceptual capacity is sharper. And this leads us to something even more intriguing: what happens when synchronicities seem to stop completely? Then something happens that puzzles many people on their personal growth journey. The synchronicities stop. Suddenly, without warning, those meaningful numbers stop appearing. The memorable coincidences evaporate. The patterns you were noticing simply go silent. And it's exactly at this moment, in this apparent feedback vacuum, that many people enter total confusion. They start questioning everything. Have I lost my connection? Did I do something wrong? Was all of this just imagination? But what may be happening in this silence isn't disconnection or abandonment. It may be a natural phase of integration, a moment where your system is stabilizing at a new frequency. See, there's an interesting principle to consider here. When you're changing from one state to another, when you're in transition, there's naturally more turbulence, more activity, more noise in the system. It's like when you're tuning a radio station, while you're turning the dial, you hear static, fragments of different stations, interference. But when you finally lock onto the right frequency, what happens? The noise stops, the transmission becomes clear. The drama of searching ends. Periods of many synchronicities may indicate periods of transition, of adjustment. When they stop, it may mean you've stabilized at a new frequency. You haven't lost the connection. You may have actually found a stability that doesn't require constant confirmation. The challenge is that many of us have developed a kind of dependency on external validation. We need that dopamine hit that comes with each noticed synchronicity, with each recognized pattern. It's understandable these experiences can be exciting and comforting. But consider this: if you always need external signs to confirm you're connected, you're still operating from a place of separation. You're still seeing yourself as separate from the field, needing messages from it. But what if the silence is an invitation to recognize that you were never separate? That you are an integral part of the field, not a receiver waiting for transmissions. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this in an interesting way when he discusses the concept of living from the end. He suggests that when you truly embody the desired future state, When you genuinely feel as if it has already happened, you stop looking for confirmation. It's a fascinating paradox. The moment you truly no longer need the signs, you've become what you were seeking. Neuroscience studies show that the brain doesn't clearly distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real experience. Both activate similar neural networks. So when you can maintain the feeling of your desired reality without external evidence, you're literally training your brain and body for that reality. The silence of synchronicities can be seen as a natural test of maturity in personal development. It's easy to maintain a positive state when you're receiving constant confirmation. But being able to maintain your frequency, your coherence, your vision when there's no obvious external feedback, that requires a different level of mastery. It's like learning to ride a bicycle at first. You need training wheels. They give you security, confirmation that you won't fall. But eventually, to truly master cycling, the training wheels have to come off. The initial wobble is scary, but it's the only way to develop true balance. The silence of synchronicities may be the universe removing your training wheels, inviting you to discover your own internal balance. There's also an important psychological consideration. The brain is an extraordinarily efficient pattern recognition machine. When you start paying attention to synchronicities, your brain becomes hypervigilant for them. The reticular activating system, the part of the brain that filters relevant information, begins to prioritize these patterns. But over time, what was new and exciting becomes familiar. The brain adapts. You may still be experiencing many meaningful connections, but your brain no longer registers them with the same intensity. They've become normalized. It's like when you move near the ocean. At first, the sound of the waves is all you hear. After a while, you stop consciously noticing them, even though they're still there. The signal hasn't disappeared. Your perception has expanded to normalize it. The invitation here is profound. Instead of chasing synchronicities, what if you became the synchronicity itself? What if, instead of looking for signs that you're aligned, you became a sign of alignment for others? When you maintain a consistent state of coherence, when your electromagnetic field is stable and harmonious, you become what researchers call a coherent attractor. You don't just notice synchronicities. You become the vortex through which they manifest for others. They feel an inexplicable shift in your very presence. Opportunities seem to naturally organize around you. You stop chasing magic and start being the epicenter of it. And now we arrive at the point of total integration, where everything we've explored converges into a unified understanding. All this time, while you were looking for external signs, waiting for confirmations, begging for synchronicities to validate your choices, there's a profound perspective reversal available. And it's not just a beautiful philosophical idea, it's a possibility supported by the physics of electromagnetic fields, by the neuroscience of perception, and by studies on heart-brain coherence. You're not just a receiver of reality. The evidence suggests you're an active participant in its creation through the electromagnetic field you generate, through the states of coherence or chaos you maintain, through the quality of frequency transmit moment to moment. The double-slit experiment, one of the most famous and controversial in quantum physics, demonstrated that the act of observation affects the behavior of particles. Though the exact interpretation of this phenomenon is still intensely debated among physicists, what's clear is that observation, the act of measuring, of interacting, has an effect on the observed system. Now, while it's important not to over-extrapolate from this subatomic scale experiment to the human scale, it's fascinating to consider the implications. If observation affects quantum systems, and if our bodies generate measurable electromagnetic fields that interact with the environment, then our presence, our attention, our state of coherence may be influencing the world around us in ways we're only beginning to understand scientifically. Think about how the sun doesn't question whether it's shining. It simply radiates. And that natural, consistent, inevitable radiation is what allows life to exist on Earth. Now consider, what if you could operate from a similar certainty? Not arrogance or denial of reality, but a deep confidence in your ability to generate coherence, to maintain your frequency, to trust your presentiment system. What would change if you stopped seeking external permission to trust your internal whispers? If you recognize that your body is already detecting future information, that your heart is already processing data, your brain can't yet articulate, the contemplative masters of various traditions from Buddhists to Christian mystics, from Sufis to indigenous shamans all pointed, in different languages, to a similar truth, that the separation between observer and observed, between internal and external, between you and the field, is largely a perceptual construction. Modern science, through the study of electromagnetic fields, cardiac coherence, and presentiment phenomena, is offering a new language to explore these ancient observations. Neville Goddard, a 20th century teacher, had a provocative phrase, "You don't get what you want, you get what you are." In light of what we've discussed about electromagnetic fields and states of coherence, this gains an additional dimension. It's not magical thinking, it's the recognition that your electromagnetic state, your internal coherence or chaos, is constantly interacting with and influencing the field around you. The real transformation, the fundamental change, can happen when you stop seeking signs and start recognizing that you're generating a signal all the time. Every thought generates electrical activity in the brain. Every emotion creates changes in the heart's electromagnetic field. Every breath, every choice to remain in fear or shift to calm, is transmitting information to the field. The question isn't whether you're influencing the reality around you. Measurements show that electromagnetic fields interact. The question is, what quality of signal are you choosing to transmit? Are you transmitting coherence or chaos? Harmony or dissonance? Clarity or confusion? Dr. Joe Dispenza and other researchers have documented measurable changes in people who make this transition from external seekers to internal generators of coherence. Change is not just psychological, but physiological. Alterations in heart rate variability, in brainwave patterns, even in gene expression markers. When you consistently maintain states of coherence, when you operate from elevated frequencies like gratitude, compassion, and love, your body responds by optimizing its functions. Your immune system strengthens, your mental clarity increases, your capacity for presentiment for detecting subtle information from the field sharpens, and perhaps most importantly, you become what researchers call a coherence influencer. Your presence literally helps others around you enter more coherent states, as demonstrated in HeartMath studies. The journey we've taken together through these scientific discoveries and their implications ends here, but your personal exploration is just beginning. You now have knowledge about the science of presentiment, about how your body detects future information. You understand how your electromagnetic field interacts with the environment. You know about the importance of heart-brain coherence. But knowledge without application is just intellectual entertainment. The invitation now is for you to experiment, explore, test these capacities in your own life. If this exploration resonated with something inside you, if you felt that subtle recognition that comes when we encounter information that confirms what we've always intuited, then do 3 things now. First, subscribe to this channel and activate all notifications. There's much more to explore together about the science of consciousness and human potential. Second, write in the comments, "I am the signal," and observe how this simple act of public declaration begins to change your perception. And third, share this video with someone you feel is ready for this information. Remember, science is revealing extraordinary capacities we all possess. The question is whether we choose to develop them consciously. You have the capacity for presentiment. You generate a measurable electromagnetic field. You can enter states of coherence. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? The choice, as always, is yours.